this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is the last of the 3 plants to deal with, and quite honestly the one probably with more troubles, even though it may not look as bad as at least one of the other 2. But whereas the other 2, the problems were probably singular, this one may have multiple problems. And quite honestly at the moment I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I know what I am going to do first, and that's get it out of this basket. Some unicorn juice. And because I need the plant to come out the top of the basket, oh that was handy, come out the top of the basket, I need to get the wire out of the way first. And hopefully that's not going to be too difficult. These 2 screws were loose enough to undo by hand. Nuts, sorry. So that's a good start. Put them somewhere safe. And then I should be able to just lift the... oh, we've got washers as well. Blimey. There's always one that don't want to come undone, isn't there? Right, that's the 2 nuts and me 2 washers. And this wire can have a bit of help via the pliers and just ease it away from the bolt. There we go. I don't need to take all 4 off, I just need to take these 2 off so that I can bend the whole of the wire out of the way. These leaves will just pull up through the gap, and then the wire's out of the way. And I can't remember, it's too long ago, and I didn't video it, so I can't go and check how I actually secured this plant in the pot, but I believe I just plonked it in there. So in theory, it should just unplonk itself. Yeah, in theory. All that's in there. And I think therein lies part of the problem. I know what I'm expecting. Do you know what would be really nice? What would be really nice is that there's a pot full of critters that have eaten the roots off, because at least that means I've found the problem. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm just going to have to tease this away from all 4 sides, one after the other, and then hopefully it will lift out. Whoops. That was an accident just waiting to happen, wasn't it? With wire flying around and containers full of liquid in the way. Let's get the tag out of the way. I have to have a new tag, I can't read that anymore. Oh. Well, it's in there. You know, I still don't think that's loose enough to pull it out. Well, there's another alternative. If you can't pull it out from the top, we could give it some help. Oh, I can see why it's not coming out. The mesh where the root ball's expanded is tucked in underneath the top slat on the side, which means the mesh can't pull out, and the roots have actually grabbed hold of the mesh. So I think I'm getting there, slowly but surely. Yep, I think we're there now. Well, one of my theories is being proved as this plant is coming out, slowly but surely. Right, where are we now then? See what I mean? It's just a solid mass of roots. Ah. Come out. Thank you. Right, now what have we got? Well, first of all, there's quite a lot of air space. See, when I planted this, I put crocking in the bottom. Why the hell did I do that? With a really fine root system like this, I suppose you could say, well, at the time I didn't know how vigorous the plant was because it was new. And if I'd known that, I may have done this completely differently. I'm just hoping this mesh will come off. It's going to leave some roots behind. I'm going to lose some roots. Hopefully some of them will pull back. It's a very, very branching root system. So root tips lost hopefully will be quickly replaced. And still do it as gently as I can, you know, and tear as little as possible. You can see where the root mass is. Yeah, this is the side that's going to be difficult. I don't know, some of them are pulling back through and some of them are staying with the mesh, but that's a half and half. Well, let's get that out of the way. Now what are we left with? This is what I was suspecting. I was suspecting that the root mass is eating the media. I know that sounds like a silly expression. Look at the size of that. I don't get pieces that big anymore. It makes me wonder where I got these big pieces, because the chances are that's not orchiata bark. It's just a solid mass of roots, and despite this being absolutely soaked yesterday, does it look like I'm working with soggy roots and soggy media? The answer is no. This plant is a vigorous grower, which I know now, and I think therein lies most of its problems. Its top growth has outgrown its ability to support itself, because it was in a confined space. Who did that? Well, that was me. Did I know that was going to happen? No. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. Anyway, it doesn't smell, so I don't think I can add that to its problems, breaking down media. It doesn't smell of mushrooms, but you can see it's a solid mass of roots. They are very fine roots. And the one good thing about a root system like that is it tends to recover incredibly quickly. Now I'm probably not going to be able to get all of this media out. I will endeavour to get as much out as possible, but the fact that I know when this was last repotted and the media that the roots are in is actually orchiata bark, and I have let this get quite dry in between waterings through the winter, so it won't be broken down. So if any stays there, so be it. It won't be the end of the world, but a lot of it will come out under the tap. But we have viable roots, I just don't think we have enough of them. And you have to bear in mind, you know, if the plant's growing at such a rate at the top, and the root system is restricted, it can only get so much hydration in it. And I have noticed, because I've been studying this plant a little bit more perhaps recently, that the new growths are slowing up. They're not as good, and it's just not getting enough hydration, and along with the hydration is the food. The chances are it just hasn't had enough of that either. And you have to bear in mind, what did this thing do in the spring? It bloomed its head off. What sort of resources would the plant have used up to do that? And then not getting them replaced. So I think this had many problems, not just one. But they've all stemmed from the fact that its roots could not expand sufficiently. So by sorting that out, hopefully it will start to correct its various problems. But the one thing it's not going to do is stay as a giant plant. I don't need a specimen sized plant of this. I could rethink that now. If I put it in a really big pot, I could let it grow, but where the hell am I going to put it? It's too big. It's got to go into pieces. And I believe it's new pieces growing on well with some nice new new growths with some clean leaves, I think will sell. So I can, if I can split this into, well, it's at least 2, probably 3, I get my money back. Or I might even make a little bit, which I don't ever buy orchids to make money, but sometimes it just happens. And, get a few pennies and get a new orchid, something different. Because I've got this one. Okay, so I'm going to give that a clean up. I think, quite honestly, this is the problem. this is the problem. These roots need room. They need room to grow. All the new ones are getting tangled up with the old ones, and like I say, it's eaten the media. Just no room left for the poor thing to grow. Unfortunately, this bit up here carried on doing its thing and just ran out of steam. Simple as that. Oh, excuse me. It's been cold, still hasn't completely gone, you know. Right, I'll have a clean up and I'll decide where I'm going to split it. I am going to split it. It's going to go into reasonable sized pots where the roots can expand, but starting with a smaller plant, and then hopefully it will grow on a good rate of knots, and we'll see where we are. So I'll be back. Okay, a couple of Roger rules. These may not work for you, but they do for me. Undecided decisions. Walk away, take a break, do something else for a bit and come back. Yeah? So I've done nothing to that since I turned the camera off, apart from take a break. Yeah? And it's just suddenly dawned on me that this plant will be an awful lot easier to deal with if it was already in its pieces, instead of trying to handle it like it is. So the first job is to separate it. There is a natural division there. Yeah? Now, this is not going to tear apart like some orchids do, not with a root ball like that. So we're going to have to perform surgery. And you know me, if I'm going to cut something, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure my flipping knife is sharp. So while I was taking a break, I did that. Now I'm going to go down through there, and it's a case of I don't care what I cut into, that's where the division's going to be. So using my newly sharpened knife, we'll go in through there. Now when I'm cutting a plant, I always stop. I get so far and then I stop and see if it will tear. Well, it won't yet. So it can have another cut and then have another pull. And there'll come a time when it will separate. And that way you don't cut quite so many roots. There we go. So that's one. Now, what damage have I done with the cut? Next to nothing. And the bad thing is I can't see a rhizome to look at, because you know what it's like when I get a plant out of a pot. That's the first thing I want to do. There's some old bulbs down here. They can come off. They're not serving a decent purpose now. This is a theory, but I think it should be reasonably obvious. You remember I've said with some of the dendrobiums that we've got a lot of mobility with nutrients and things, and a lot of orchids have got pseudobulbs or canes to store stuff up for later. There comes a point where your orchid is working hard to do that in older parts of the plant, perhaps not leaving quite as much in other parts of the plant. So at this particular point, not having enough roots to support itself, leaving old bulbs on serves no purpose. I'll have a go at the sheaths, although I don't think this one's ever had a bug problem. Whoops. Oh, see, now that was a weak one. Oh well. Could have been damaged with the cutting process. You know, major surgery and all that. That's not a bad piece of plant, so that's one. I can go away and clean that up, but that's an okay piece of plant. I'd be happy with that as my plant, just that piece. So that's one. Now the next bit's not going to be so easy. That's why I did that one first and got it out of the way. This would also make a good plant, but it's still too big for me. I don't want the plant to be that big. Now I'm just letting it flop to see if it will naturally tell me where it wants to split. And don't forget when you're splitting, oh, I see a couple of new growths down in there. You may be better off being on the outside of the plant, so I'm going to make the cut next to those where I can see a couple of new growths, which means it's going to be down through there. And again, some bulbs near the cut may be lost, so be it. I'll try and minimise it, but it is quite major surgery. And do remember, I've just sharpened this knife. Where don't I want it cutting? Anywhere near me. Always cut away. And then if you slip, you don't cut you. You might cut a bit of your plant you didn't intend to. But that's better than losing the end of your finger. Or taking a knuckle off, or, you know, having to stop what you're doing and rush off and get some stitches. So take care with sharp implements. Always cut away, whether you're unboxing, undoing a parcel, mucking about cutting pieces of string when you're doing a mount. Keep your sharp blades pointing away from you. Damage limitation. That's not a bad plant. But just looking at it, it's got a flat back and it's got a wobbly piece here. I can't actually see any new growths on that particular piece at the moment, but I'm going to take that little piece off, because when I pot it, take it off, cut it off. There's a good reason, yeah. Now it's a good looking plant. The fact that it's two doesn't matter. So there's now potential for new growths to come out in more places instead of all along one edge. So that will be one plant, or another plant. Yeah? Yep, that's good. So that's two, and that should just leave one on its own that's okay and doesn't need any more hacking or messing about with. He says. I could strap that, I suppose, but those pieces are not going to be that successful. But it's it's annoying because there's a lovely new growth on that bulb. So if I pull it gently and take it off, and then what have we got? We've got an old bulb there that's a bit low. So if I take that one off, now that bit with its new growth can go there. Now those pieces haven't got very good roots at the moment, but they will either grow new roots or die off, and if they die off they're in a nice place to just pull them out of the pot. But again, that doesn't make a bad looking plant. That's not bad. I've got a lot of sheaths to take off, but that's not bad. I don't think I need to do anything else with that. See, we have got new growths, there are some. So yeah, 3 pieces. These will need tying when I put them in the pot, because they haven't got a root system to support themselves, but they've got enough roots on there to be able to grow some more. Right, surely there's a piece here somewhere. See, that bulb has got some signs of rotting at the base, but it hasn't got any pretty colours. Here's another bit. So I've got a bit of rhizome I can get at, yes. Yep, and that eliminates that problem. Right, so I've got 3 lots of cleaning up to do and 3 lots of potting to do. And the cleaning up takes place in the sink, you can't see it, and you've seen enough potting videos to not worry about me actually potting them, so I'll come back when I'm done. So I'll see you in a bit. Changed my mind again. It suddenly dawned on me there's an awful lot of people probably deal with Phalaenopsis and possibly some Cattleyas and have never seen a root system like that, and it would be a little unfair to assume that everybody's potted a plant with an incredibly fine root system. So I will show potting this one up, but already you can see, even though this is the smallest section, look how big the root mass looks now, because I've been running it under the tap and teasing it with my fingers to get the old bark out. Look how much it's fluffed up. Yeah? Look how many more places those roots can go that they couldn't go before. Yeah? That root system's virtually doubled in size, but what's more important is what I do next, and getting it in the pot in a way that it can utilise the space it's now got. So I will show that one being repotted. I'll get my stuff. Okay, let's go. This particular time, I've always said, you know, if you've got a pot that looks a bit big, you can make it smaller by adding crocking and then planting the plant deeper, which means you're only using a small portion of media. But my analysis of this plant and believing that it needed a bigger root run, the amount of crocking that's going in there is the least I can possibly get away with. I just want enough to allow some air to get in the bottom of the plant. So it's literally right down in the bottom. This is an air cone pot. Can you see that? Yes, you probably can. So it has more availability of air entering the pot at the bottom. Yeah? And initially this root system will take a while to recover. So, you know, the bottom of the pot could end up staying wet too long if the air can't get in there. So that's the logic. And I'll put a little bit of, I'm only using small bark, I haven't got any moss, and for this root system I probably wouldn't use any anyway. So the smallest of layers, just enough to cover up those gaps, and then I'm hoping this pot's going to go in quite low down. Literally just tease the roots in, they're ever so fine, and you can tuck them in with your fingers so that they point downwards and don't point skywards, because you want them to grow down into the pot. So having the tips pointing downwards does help. Yeah. Now I want the pot sitting quite high, so I need more media. Yeah. Stand back, have a look. If I'd started putting the media in at that point, my plant would have ended up buried in the pot, and then what wouldn't have it been able to do? Utilise the new media. No, still needs more. Try that. I don't want to go too high, otherwise yeah, see, that's about right. Base of the plant, near the rim of the pot. Yeah. Now, the difference between a fine root system, if that was a phalaenopsis, I'd have a handful of large chunky bark and I would just throw it in the pot and give it a shake, and wherever it went I'd be happy. I wouldn't be poking and prodding and messing about, because the thick chunky roots can break. These can break, but believe it or not, it's far less likely to break little fine roots than it is big chunky ones. They snap. These don't. They bend. So the difference is small amounts at a time and lots of wiggling. There's an awful lot of gaps between these roots that I want filled up. I don't want them left as air gaps. Not that sort of plant. So lots and lots of wiggling and gentle pressing. You don't need a pneumatic drill. It's only roots and it's only little bits of bark. And then when you've done some, don't forget to go around the other side of the pot, because as you're doing one side you're probably pushing the plant over. Yeah? So now you can come around this side and start working, little bit at a time. Lots of wiggling, lots of making sure there's no air gaps, just a bit at a time. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Gradually, gradually, you're teasing the bark into all the gaps, which with small bark is easy to do, and with fine root systems, quite honestly, is essential. It's just a gentle process. As I said, you don't need a pneumatic drill to poke your bark in. It's just gentle, gentle, gentle. Just keep working up towards the top. Now there's very little roots around this side, so I can now actually bring the bark up to the level I want. And then when I'm pushing away around the other side, I'll be pushing against that instead of pushing the plant into the gap. It's got something to lean against. Back around the other side. Now I've still got roots here, so we can now start teasing. We're getting near the top of the plant now. So gradually I'll get to the point where I think that's enough. And we're nearly there, quite honestly. Nearly there. Now there were a couple of pseudo bulbs that were rotted at the base. So it implies that the plant ought to sit well above the media in case the base of the pseudo bulbs rot. Think back, what have I been trying to do over the last 3 weeks at least? I've been trying to get this flipping thing hydrated. I've been absolutely soaking it. So my bad. And that process all this just helps this bark settle into all the gaps. Now even though that had quite a lot of roots, that plant wobbles. So now I'm just going to push down the edge gently with my thumb. I'll show you, that's all I do, just down the edge. And that's just to help firm it in the pot. Now that bit of pressing is quite hard, but it's only applying pressure to the very, very edge of the pot. And in most cases, that's not where the roots are. I'm hoping that by doing this, it will stop that plant wobbling. If not, it'll have to be staked. Wobbly plants in pots, no good. Yep, done the job. Unfortunately now, I've got some bare roots sticking out, so let's give them something to get into. That'll do. So there we go, that's a way of handling a very fine root system, because you don't want lots of air gaps in those types of roots. Also, that will help all of those roots hydrate, because I can virtually guarantee every single root is touching some media. Yeah? So it will have hydration available to it. Every one of those roots can get at some moisture. And with a fine root system like that, that's what's needed, quite honestly. Now, that leaf has broken. Is there any point in leaving it there? Absolutely none. Take it off then. It's only going to die back, isn't it? Yeah? And that's quite a bad leaf, and it's got a tear in the middle of it. Now how it got that, I don't know, I don't really care. It's not the best of leaves, and it's got some marks on it, so I don't want it. Yeah? The less leaves a plant has got to support when it's recovering, you might find the quicker it recovers. But take too many off and you're reducing the photosynthesis. There's a balance. Right, now all I've got to do is keep my eye on the few new leaves that I've got on this part of the plant. That new leaf has got no strength in it at all. Yeah, and it's got streaks on it. Yeah, so that's part of the deficiency problem. Let's see if we can find another one. This is a relatively new growth. Yeah, so that one I can keep my eye on and see if it improves. Yeah, so I've got so. Oh, and there's another one as well. That's a relatively new growth, and the first leaf it put out has got streaks on it. The next leaf it's put out isn't quite as bad, but it is a little pale in colour. So we can watch that one and see what happens now. Yeah. So there we go. That's a fine root system. How many roots can you see? Not many. That's because they're in the pot, yeah, where I tease the media in round the outside. They've now got room to spread. Once they're up against the side of the pot, they can only go round the pot. They can't move outwards away from the plant. So that's how I do a fine rooted system. That needs some hydration, yeah? I wouldn't do that with a Tulumnia. Dream of doing that with a Tulumnia, but I will with this, because I know now this plant needs to be fed and watered well. Yeah, to do that it needs room for its roots to balance the top growth, which hopefully it now can. So there we go, and I won't bother showing the other two because I've done this one now, but that's the end of that set of three. Yeah, I started off looking at all three plants and talking over, you know, their problems, because they all had a problem, but all of their problems were different. And then I've gone through, we had a look at the Vanda, He's still enjoying his nice cup of tea, by the way. I don't know quite how long he's going to carry on enjoying it, but he's going to get some. And then what do we have a look at? I've forgotten what the other one was. Oh yeah, the Dendrobium friedrichsianum, you know, which that one's problem was new root tips coming off, and it seriously looked like they were being eaten off, and some breaking down moss at the back of the mount. And then we've had a look at this one that effectively was completely pot bound. Roots had nowhere to go, so they'd effectively stopped growing, and the top growth had carried on and used up all the resources left in that plant, meaning that it could only rely on the new nutrients and everything coming in from the bottom, and they just weren't getting in there. So hopefully now we've fixed that one too. Right, see you next time. Oh, just, these are not all going up together, these are 3 separate videos in effect, so I'll post them, you know, as a set but in a sequence. Right, see you next time. Thanks for visiting my channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are some others you could watch below. You can just click on the thumbnails. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel. You can use the link below. I post on most days, so hope to see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.